Okay, I saw this on Twitter the other day. It was kind of blowing up. That's why I thought it was something to talk about. I saw OC was reacting to this as well, or rather, she was giving her thoughts. So I thought, I wanted to kind of throw my hat in the ring here because I think it's kind of interesting. So basically, they just said they've come back to Overwatch after 350 hours of Marvel Rivals, and they're talking about the differences between, support and strategist. They're kind of saying in general a lot of stuff about their games, but they are a support player is kind of what they're saying. We're gonna watch the video, but they say right off the bat, OW engine performance feels incredible. Ults build painfully slow in Overwatch is what they're saying. One-shots are frustrating, Overwatch. People are always out of LOS, and support doesn't feel impactful. Now we're gonna go in and kind of look at their explanations for this and kind of talk about it, but my gut reaction to this initially was that I don't quite understand some of these as criticisms, particularly saying that people are always out of LOS. I guess it's maybe not even necessarily a criticism, but is that necessarily true? And I kind of want to break down why that is, but we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna actually watch this video and talk about it first.
So I came back to Overwatch after about 350 hours of Marvel Rivals, and the first thing I noticed was that Overwatch feels so incredibly smooth. Having a consistent 300 FPS across the board really does feel amazing.
That's actually crazy to me because when I think about the game feel of Rivals versus Overwatch, it is not about the FPS. It's really about the engine. It doesn't feel smooth. I mean, yes, it feels smooth because I think the actual technical frame pacing of the FPS is really, really good compared to Rivals, and Unreal Engine has some difficulties in that department. And of course, it's not the most optimized game in the world, as we've seen. And they've made some, changes from the beta and made it a little better, but it definitely has its technical problems. But to me, the engine differences are most known in kind of connectivity, in how characters move, right? In Overwatch, I think these systems that they have in place to make sure that the game functions properly are all based on the client side. So basically what I mean by that is that, let's say I have a bad connection, my character is always going to be moving smoothly on my screen, right? So, or sorry, if I see somebody with a bad connection, that character is always going to be moving smoothly, maybe not even moving at all. But the game itself is not interrupted because somebody is having FPS issues, or they're having or connectivity issues, right? But something like in Rivals, their solutions are definitely more server-wide. So somebody starts lagging, or if somebody's position is somewhat unsure by the server, whether that is FPS or connectivity or whatever, the server has problems figuring out where they are, and so it starts kind of juddering them. It kind of can't keep up with where they are. That makes Rivals feel really, really frustrating at points, because some of those really fast moving characters, it is really hard to pin down where they're actually going to be at one time. I think the reason why Overwatch feels so smooth is not just because of FPS. I think it's because of the systems that they've implemented to make sure that the game feels proper and good, and that the person that is lagging or has that low FPS is actually negatively affected. The rest of the game is allowed to proceed as normal. And I think that is a really key aspect to why the games feel so different from each other. So again, I don't think it's just FPS. I do think it has something to do with the other factors around connectivity.
Few times in this game are absolutely insane. This is a diamond account I was playing on, which isn't the highest rank by any means, but I was still hitting 6-minute queue times, and then when I got into the game, there was a 6 rank division difference in the players in those games. I'm Celestial in Rivals, and I get a 1 to 2 minute average queue time, and the ranks are pretty much straight across the board. Usually it's just straight Celestial 3.
I mean, I think the thing about that, and they're not saying anything about what, if that's good or bad, right? I mean, I think queue times in general are negative. It's just more players, there's just a higher player, higher player population, right? I mean, I don't think that's really anything to talk about. Now you might go, oh my god, Overwatch is dying, whatever. I mean, remember, we are in a bit of a lull period. Marvel Rivals is out, and Overwatch hasn't had a substantial update since then. So, I mean, it's more natural that Marvel Rivals is going to have so many more players, even completely outside of the Overwatch space, you know, just completely new people as well. So yeah, it does kind of suck that, you know, in Diamond, you're getting queues like that. I will say I typically queue most roles in comp, or like one role. I haven't been feeling that. I've been playing comp here and there throughout this whole time period. So I don't know. Again, that's kind of like personal. I've been playing in higher ranks than at least this person. So I couldn't tell you why that is. It could be where they're located. I don't know their region. You know, I don't think there's anything like, there's not too much like credence in that. And I have definitely seen streamers in Rivals, especially in the higher ranks, you know, getting 30-minute queues, because that's just naturally how it works, right? Again, it's player population. So yes, queue times are longer in Overwatch for sure. But Rivals also only has like 2 main queues. They've got comp and quick play, where Overwatch has a lot more at one time as well. That's also something to keep in mind. Overwatch is currently running a lot of different limited time modes. Some in the arcade, an extra 6v6 test. As of today, they're running the Moth meta and the Lover Watch thing. So Overwatch also does have a lot more spreading out of its player population than Rivals, which I think is pretty important to note.
Then in the game, I noticed that ultimates build so incredibly slowly. It feels almost painful how slow they build. I think for pretty much every 2 ultimates you build in Rivals, you build 1 ultimate in Overwatch. But not only that, for example, if you're playing Luna Snow in Rivals, you get a 12-second Giga Healing ultimate that has massive impact on the game. Whereas in Overwatch, I'm playing Ana and I get Nano Boost, which is a good ability, of course, but you have to pair it generally with somebody else to get any value. So you're reliant on someone else, and then it just doesn't feel that powerful as well, at least nowhere near as powerful as like a 12-second Luna roll. So ults in general just feel really weak.
See, now this is where the personal comes into play, because I think ults in Rivals are very, very powerful. But to say that they don't feel powerful in Overwatch in comparison, I actually think Overwatch ults, you know, we're talking support ults here because this is support ult, they feel a lot more powerful and a lot more impactful because they are limited. They are powerful abilities, like you say, like Nano is, or what this guy says, like Nano is, but the fact that they are not 12-second immortalities where you just sit there and dance and are basically invulnerable and your team's invulnerable, that is when an ultimate really feels powerful. You feel the weight and the impact of it. Luna Snow ult, I have played so much Rivals, I've had to play a lot of Luna in my games. It feels like nothing. Like, I do not feel powerful or good when I'm using Luna ult. It is having a major impact on the match, sure, but I just feel so, like, disconnected from it. You know, like, I think, like, a contemporary in Overwatch, Zen, has, you know, basically the same ult, but for whatever reason, maybe it's because Zen's is slower, maybe it's because there's better sound design in Overwatch, it feels a lot better to heal people up with Transcendence than it does with Luna ult by a considerable margin, in my opinion. You also have to take into account that since Rivals ult charge so much faster, you are de-emphasizing each individual ult. So, you know, when everyone's super, no one will be. Yeah, exactly. It's like every individual ult doesn't matter, and especially if those ults are super long and super powerful. Like, yes, in theory, you know, you look at raw numbers and everything, like, yes, it's more powerful than an Overwatch ult, but there's so many times where Rivals ults are just kind of thrown out, and just, especially in the support role, like, especially in support, I think is really, really the key, because they are just kind of thrown out, you hit the button, and you just got so much, like, power that you don't really even have to think or play around, like Luna Snow, like, yes, it has a damage boost on it, but you just sit there and heal. And let's be really real. You really do just sit there and heal, because that is the most effective. And you sit there for 12 seconds and nothing happens. And Mantis, you hit your button and you just go do what you were gonna do anyways. Just a little more aggressive because you've got the overhealth, right? Rocket just throws down Bongo, and it has so much health that it doesn't matter where you put it, because they're not, if they try to like take it out, it's gonna take a million seconds too. I think it's why control feels so bad in Rivals. The healer ults make stalling way too easy. Oh yeah, absolutely, right? So I mean, like, to me, Overwatch ults just feel better. Like, there's kind of no way around that. They are more limited, but they have that power, right? They have the power spike, but, you know, the drawbacks as well. So when you get a good ult, then that's great, right? And like, you say that Ana, you have to, you know, what's it called? You're relying on a teammate, right? Well, you know, there's other ults in Rivals that do rely on teammates as well. I mean, particularly Atom ult, it's a res, but, you know, the value is just rezzing and getting your team back for them to go do the right thing, right? It's a little different. I'm being a little facetious. Oh my god, I can't say that word! Facetious. Oh, you know the one I'm talking about. Anyways, so long story short, I think that is generally like, I don't think that, I mean, is it fair criticism? I don't know, but I generally think that is overblown, a little off basis.
What's super noticeable is even though they took the HP of the heroes up to 250, the one-shots were still really noticeable. I was playing against a Sojourn, which is a really popular hero in Overwatch right now, and like you peek a corner and your head
Jesus Christ, that
flying
happens
off almost
fast.
instantly. Sojourn isn't technically a one-shot, but it's like 2 bullets on the left click plus a railgun, and then you're just gone. Nothing really happens like that in Marvel Rivals.
Nothing like that happens in Rivals. I mean, that, yeah, like you get Hawkeye, Hela, I think there's a lot of burst damage in this game, especially if you're getting through these chokes. I mean, like, with 6 people on the field, it can feel like really like you're taking a lot of burst damage at a time. But, you know, I don't know, like, that definitely does happen in Rivals, and it especially happens with ults. Moon Knight ult. It just, he places it on the ground, it's hard to react to, and it just does a million damage just like right away. That's just effectively a one shot that was hard to play around. Like, you know, you're using an example of something that you found, you know, in your gameplay, but I will critique this a little bit. You do sit out in the open for just a second. You wide peek it, you know the risk, but you stay out in the open too long, in my opinion, right? So it's like, yes, there are one shots, but that's kind of like, in fact, you understand it's like a pseudo one shot. But there is a lot of burst damage, but you kind of have to like play your risks, right? I don't know, like, yeah, I'm not a one-shot like defender. I don't agree with them. And I think Overwatch is definitely a little burstier on average, but I think it's like, I think it's a little disingenuous to say that, you know, Rivals doesn't have that, you know, or it's like not noticeable, because it absolutely is. And you know, especially, you know, you say you're in Celestial, it's probably still happening where Hawkeye and Hela are banned in a lot of games as well. That could also be kind of part of the thing, where those characters with the one-shots that you don't like are just not, you know, being played. There are other characters that have very similar things to one-shots, like Doctor Strange, just like really close to that like threshold. When you really break down to it, just big burst damage, which Rivals definitely does have, and it has a bunch of melee characters that can effectively one-shot as well. So like, I think it's disingenuous. I think that maybe it feels a little bit more like you're dying early, but to say that Rivals doesn't have it, I mean, it's just objectively not true.
Everyone seems to be out of LOS all the time. This doesn't seem to happen nearly as much in Marvel Rivals. You have more ability to get to them, to keep them in LOS. I think this relates back to the high burst. You're just constantly scared to peek because you can die so freaking quickly in Overwatch to the burst damage. But it feels really frustrating as a support to not be able to LOS the people that you actually want to heal.
I don't think it's because people are scared. I think it's because the maps are more open. There's a lot more space that you can take. There's a lot more angles that you can take. And so naturally your team is going to spread out more and kind of go for like riskier, aggressive plays. In Rivals, a lot of times it feels like it feels like you kind of tunnel into one spot because you're trying to get through a choke altogether. And there's another character on the field, which is part of it, right? So I think that this is not something like maybe it is like inherent to Rivals, like I'm trying to explain it off, but like if you think that people are out of LOS in Overwatch, in my opinion, you probably are not playing it correctly. You need to be the one to understand where your teammates are and how you can help them. And if you're super far away and your teammates are out of LOS, I think your initial positioning is probably not playing to the tempo that you guys need to be playing to. I think you are playing for your life a little too much when you need to be playing a little riskier with your team. And of course you're afraid about the one shot. Well, then you need to be a little bit more aware of when the one shots are actually a threat, because for the most part, they aren't always a threat all the time. So I think that Rivals probably just feels like there's more interaction happening because there's less space to work with and there's one extra person to look at. But in Overwatch, the time periods you have, I guess, are a little more limited, especially since you don't have that extra person. And then, in to that regard, if you can't see a teammate, can you see an enemy? Can you not see anybody in this scenario? You know what I mean? Like, it's your job to be able to keep tabs on both the team and the enemy. And if you're LOS'd out of everything, in my opinion, again, that is something that is probably an issue with positioning. I don't think it's an issue with Overwatch as a game. That's again, like it's definitely a playstyle thing in that regard. I think you could also say things like Wolvie's Dive, Winter Soldier Hook, Squirrel Girl Nut, all perform a similar role of being you get hit, you die abilities. That's true too, going back to the kind of like the one-shot type things. There are definitely other abilities that are like one-shots in this game as well. So
overall feeling, and I think this is the biggest thing, at least as support in Overwatch, you don't feel incredibly powerful. In Marvel Rivals, as any role, the character you're playing just feels ridiculously powerful. Now, this might be different if you play tank in Overwatch, but at least as support, you don't feel that strong. And I'm not saying support isn't strong. It's just the feeling of it doesn't feel like you're having a lot of impact.
I really disagree with this. I have been, when I was playing ranked, because I don't like playing ranked in that game, but like when I would play ranked, I would play like Mantis and Luna. This was season 0, so these were the characters that were the meta supports, right? And it felt so much harder to feel my impact on the game compared to when I would just play Doctor Strange or just play Hela. Right? Like on those roles, I felt the power. I say roles, on Strange is a different case because I don't think on tank you feel it a lot on some certain characters. But like on Hela, you can really just command a game. You can really feel your power and you can feel your impact. But on Luna and Mantis, even in these lobbies that were, they were lower leveled, like I'll admit, like they were like gold. I didn't like playing the game. Like I could definitely keep climbing, but I just didn't like it. But in these lobbies, we need a support here. Like we need a Luna or else we're just not gonna be able to, take the damage. I'd play Luna and it feels like I'm fighting for my life the entire time. It doesn't feel like I'm really commanding the battlefield. And in Overwatch, with a lot of these supports, I think you do. I think you really do feel like every individual choice that you make feels really good, and it feels like it has an impact on most characters. I'm talking about the ones like Lucio's and Briggs and Anna's, even like your Baptistes and your Kiris and stuff like that. Like, everything you do really does feel great, and it does feel like you've put a lot of effort in to saving somebody, right? A lot of the rival supports, they don't give me that type of feeling. I've complained about Warlock in the past, where Warlock feels like a wet noodle character because you just snap your fingers and everybody's at full health, and like that doesn't feel powerful. But when I'm playing Ana and I throw a Bionade through 3 people and I land it on a wall so it gets past a shield and still hits somebody or heals my ally, that feels way better. That makes me feel really, really good, right? So not to say that the supports and rivals don't have any of these moments, but I think those moments are less on average. And I think that supports have a much more commanding role and a much more powerful role in Overwatch, at least in the offensive, the feeling of being powerful. Where in rivals, again, like we talked about it earlier, I don't feel very powerful when I'm on these support heroes, especially because sustain is so good, and focusing on sustain is really, really important. Overall, just taking a look at that, obviously allowed to have his opinion. I think that's totally valid. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything, and I do think that there were some criticism, especially about one-shots, that are valid about Overwatch. But it doesn't quite, I don't think all of it quite came together as well. In fact, before we go, let me take a look. I'm going to look at OC's tweet and see what she said. Support ultimates are the most powerful in the game, which is true. They are definitely the most, visceral, right? Like, they have the most impact, especially, fight changing, right? Auto's damage boost is used in the example, yet is one of the faster charging ultimates that you can build in one fight. That is true, right? Ana is a main healer, as they say, she does a lot of focusing on healing more. She can heal more people for higher amounts compared to an AoE healer. So she builds ult charge faster, right? She's like Baptiste, right? That's another a good thing to to keep in mind there. Marvel Rivals has a triple support problem. Supports are unbalanced in game. Of course, they'll feel good. We used to have that too. It's called Goats. It isn't fun. Now, I agree. Triple support is not fun. I don't care if it isn't the single best meta. It is easy enough to use. It is annoying as hell. And I don't really agree that supports feel good necessarily, but they definitely are extremely powerful and, in some ways, many ways, much more powerful than their Overwatch counterparts, at least on the pure numbers game like we talked about earlier. But that's everything in Rivals. Ultimate-centric metas are less fun. It becomes a game of how fast can you build this ultimate. That's what we've actually had with Juno, Brig, and Juno Lucio recently because of Juno. Taking power away from her ultimate and putting it in other parts of hero kits is healthy for the game. Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Bringing it back to the other points of the initial point about ults, right? It's just when the game centers around ults, a lot of the compositions do in Rivals, especially the triple support compositions really revolve around the ult cycling. It isn't fun. It's not very interactive. The ults are too powerful to be up super often. And it can just feel like you're all throwing ults at each other for nothing. That's why Overwatch has continually, over the years, brought global ult charge down and down and down to a spot that I think it's in a really good place right now, where if you get one ult in a fight, then you're like, oh, you really did a lot that fight. Or, sorry, if you get a fight or an ult during the one fight, is what I'm trying to say, right? You did a lot during that fight. But if you don't, it's okay, right? It's not super chaotic. You can plan around which ults are coming because only a certain amount of ults are going to be online at one time. As opposed to something like Rivals, where it feels like everyone kind of gets their ults very similarly to each other, and the ults just start flying and flying and flying, and it's too chaotic. At some point, you just can't track everything, and it's not a fun gameplay loop. So I definitely agree with that as well. But You know, again, please, like, this is just their opinion. I just thought it was interesting to talk about because it's a nice, like comparison between the two about like what are the goals and like what is fun in each game, you know, like what works here and what doesn't. I think it's interesting because I want to know from you, what do you guys think about this? Do you prefer supporting in Rivals or Overwatch? But before you do that, please like, subscribe, any of that YouTube stuff. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more of me, extra videos, join my membership down below. It's like $2 a month. You just get some extra stuff. Doesn't compete with any of the stuff that I do yet. My upload schedule is the same. It's all just extra if you like me enough, I guess. I appreciate it. Twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. That's where I stream this live. Please join in on these discussions live if you want to. I appreciate it. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays is when those happen. And to really know when those happen and you get pinged when they do, join my Discord down below. Keep up with everything that I'm doing. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and please have a good day.